Today we're visiting the London home of interior design icon Nina Campbell. With a career spanning more than 5 decades, Nina's name has become synonymous with elegant, comfortable, and distinctly English style. Her work, from grand country houses to chic city apartments, has shaped the way the world defines charming and classic design.
So we touched on the lacquered ceiling here, and I think this is a very good shot of it, because you can see the pictures reflected. You can see that picture going up, and you can see these lights reflected. So somehow it lifts the whole room, I think. And I hadn't realized what a terrific success it was going to be when I just thought about it. And I love the way this door and the carving is also reflected on that ceiling. So the ceiling becomes interesting.
In this episode, Nina invites us into her own deeply personal townhouse, showing us her exquisite china collection.
And what I have, which I love, and I also collect, everybody gets their own salt and pepper. And I've got all sorts of animals. I've even got a motor car which has got my own private number plate. It says N1NA, which I had engraved on it. These are all sort of 1930s, 1940s, and all sorts of animals. So that's rather fun.
Her treasured artworks.
I bought this a long time ago from a girl called Sophie Correndon. I had it in one previous house, and I love it. I love the scale of it in this house, because this is really quite a small room, but having this massive picture, massive for this house, sort of makes it look as if it's a bigger room. The scale is marvelous.
And recounting her extraordinary journey through the design world. To watch Nina's full home tour ad-free, where she tours us through her guest room and gardens, scan the QR code or click the join button below.
Good morning, Homeworthy. I'm Nina Campbell. Welcome to my house in London.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. I'm Alison Kenworthy, the founder of Homeworthy, and we take you inside the world's most beautifully decorated homes and introduce you to the brilliant people who live there.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Liz Lang. Welcome to Grey Gardens.
Click the join button below to access all of our latest episodes ad-free and watch extended cuts of this and other homes, opening the doors to new rooms and exclusive content featuring our beloved hosts.
I can't wait to see, I'm so excited.
And if you're looking to shop items inspired by this and other Homeworthy tastemakers, be sure to use the product links below or scan the QR code on screen to find fabulous furniture, coffee table books, and accessories that can transform your house into a home.
I'm Nina Campbell. I'm an interior designer and a textile designer, and I live in Chelsea in London in a small house that I call The Hut, and I'll explain why later. I ended up in this house because suddenly all my children had their own homes and I didn't have to have anybody living with me, and I was looking for another house. I wanted to be in Chelsea. I'd gone and lived in Notting Hill, which wasn't really quite my patch. And so I asked the man who always found me houses if he could help me. Well, first of all, he sold my house very quickly, so I was virtually homeless. And he showed me this house at the end of a street that I knew. And I drove down the street looking at the houses on the right, because they were only on the right. And I said to him on the telephone, I can't find number 16. There isn't one. And I don't want to live in one of these tall houses anyway. And he said, I'm on the left. And I suddenly turned, and there was this man waving out of a sort of front garden. And I was horrified. I looked at this building, and it did look like a hut. I mean, it looked like a lean-to hut. And I said to him, I'll never get my luggage into that house. It just looks like a hut. And that's where the name The Hut stuck. Because, of course, when you walked into it, it wasn't all that big, and it was very ugly. But it had a sitting room, it had a bedroom on the ground floor, it had a bedroom upstairs. It had no basement, but it did have 2 little gardens. And in one of the gardens, there was a magnolia tree, and it was in full bloom. And I just thought, okay, I have to make this house work. And that was 16 or 17 years ago now. Actually, it's 17 years ago now. The house was really so ugly, and I had to get permission to do what I wanted to do. And what I wanted to do to make it possible for me was dig a basement. And I knew that I could because the other houses around me had basements, but this had been the artist studio of a wonderful sculptor called Sir Frank Dobson. And strangely enough, I have a friend who was in the neighborhood, and I said, oh, where are you living? And he said, oh, you must come and see my house. And he said, where are you living? And I said, well, I'm living in this extraordinary, hideous house, but it used to be the studio of Sir Frank Dobson. And he said, oh, that's interesting, because Sir Frank Dobson did a bronze head of my father. And I saw the bronze head, and I said, I would love to have a photograph, because it had Sir Frank Dobson, it had the head, and it had the man whose head it was. And I said, I'm going to bury that in the foundations of my house, because I'm digging this basement. So it was sort of rather nice that somehow there was this friend of mine who had a sort of connection to this strange little building, and it had been attached to the house in Harley Gardens next door to it. So anyway, I decided to dig the basement for a guest bedroom, for a laundry room, and for a television room and a bathroom. And then the whole ground floor was therefore released to make the living room and sort of dining room and kitchen. And my bedroom's upstairs, and it works really well for me because I have guests a lot. And the guests have the downstairs and I have the upstairs, and so it just makes you have a very nice sort of section. And having this great big open space just was also, I think, makes a very useful, entertaining space. And the main thing that I did was I changed the entry, and therefore was able to make the front garden a completely contained garden, like a walled garden, whereas it had been where you came in the front door, and it was never going to work. So I now come in through what they had as their dining end, and it's much nearer the street. And now it looks like, why wouldn't you have ever done it before? Like, I think when things work out, you always wonder why it was never done in the first place. And so now I have a street entrance, I have a little library hall, then I come into my living room, and then I go into the dining room, and then I have the staircase right in the corner. In fact, to the point that somebody came to the house once and couldn't figure out how to get upstairs. I don't know if it was the quality of the wine for dinner or whether it was just that they weren't very observant. Okay, so now I'm standing in my hallway, which I created because when I first bought the house, you came in through the garden. And I didn't really like that. I wanted to have a completely private garden, which we'll see later. But I also wanted to come in off the street. I like a sense of arrival in a house. So we come in here, and it's a drop level. And I didn't want, and actually, fun enough, nor did the council, want you to come in through the door and trip down the step. So I made quite a big landing, because I just think that when you come across a small doormat, you step on it, and then the next minute you're over it. So you bring all the wet into the house. So like this, I always do it. Actually, I advise all my clients to do a really big doormat. This is, the entire area here is a really dark aqua matting doormat. So by the time people have got in, they've rubbed their feet dry, which is excellent. The coats go in the cupboard, and then they can take everything off. And so by the time they come down this step, they've kind of arrived in the room without feeling that the door is opened into a living room. And I always think that's rather uncomfortable. So here we are, we've arrived, we go down the step, and then we get onto this wonderful dark wood floor. And what I think is important, I put this screen here, which is mirrored on one side and one of my textiles on the back. And I use it to hang pictures, and I've got a sculpture, and I've got a hall chair in case anybody needs to, I don't know, put on a pair of boots or whatever. And then I've got the drink tray, which is most important, because I think when I give a dinner and I have somebody helping me, they can deal with the drinks immediately. And by the time the person comes into the room, they have their drink, they've got rid of their coat, and all is well. The evening has started. So I really love an inviting looking drinks tray. And I've got all sorts of things, quite a lot of this liquor stuff I shouldn't think I'll ever taste, but there are some where I thought the bottles looked pretty. I was just given this, I'm sure I'll never open it, but it just looks jolly nice. These I bought because they're Austrian glass, and I love the colouring of this yellow with the orange handle. I bought it at the antique market, and my mother was Austrian, so I felt I needed a bit of Austria. These I love, and I know this is a little silver goblet, gilded inside, so you can drink anything you like out of it. And that's made by somebody I know sews this, and I'm starting to collect these silver goblets, and I want them all different. And I want to know all the silversmiths. I love glass. These are from Carlo Moretti in Venice. I bought them all in different colours, but all in greens and reds. And I got about 6 of them. And I quite like giving people drinks in a different coloured glass, because then they know if they finished it or if they haven't finished it, so you can never muddle your glass. And Ice Bucket is created by my daughter Rita, as are the little trays. I do like a sort of sense of organisation. It looks slightly chaotic, I suppose, but at least all these are lined up. I find enormous pleasure in that. And these were a gift from one of my friends. I can't live without books, because I love dogs and books. So what I did here was that I had far too many books, actually, and I don't like a living room with books in it, so I thought I'll line out this whole entryway and make this the sort of library. And actually it works rather well, because I can put up a bridge table if I want to go through my books and sit here and work. And also I can set up a bridge table and play cards. So here we have a little area, and then we go through into the drawing room, and here are the mirrors that I found also in the Battersea Antique Show that were perfect. I bought them and they just go perfectly either side, so they mirror all of this. And what I love about this house is that everywhere you go, you see a different view of something. This is a picture by John Ward of Parkinson, who was the great photographer, and he did a photograph of my father, so I sort of have that. I think that's quite special. And I love this piece of sculpture that I bought from my sister-in-law's gallery. And I got the little maquette as well. So this sort of creates a little area where people can get rid of their coats and their bags and anything they might have before going on into the next room. And I think that although this house is tiny, it was really important to me to create a sense of arrival, a point where you can just debrief in a way. And when I come home, I can take the dog's leads off, hang them in a place that I know, and it's all take my coat off, put it away, and then life begins. So this, it says special edition. It's rather special to me. One of my wonderful neighbours gave it to me when I got my OBE, and it's a sort of like a copy of the Penguin books, and purple is a sort of colour that I've just done a whole book on in purples. And so this says Queen of the Grove, and then it puts my OBE and the date that I got it, which was quite special. So that sits in the hall, and I think she gave it to me, and I put it down. I suddenly realised, yes, this is definitely the place for it. When I set out to design this house, and it was really, I think what's that wonderful expression in America, a tear down. And I did used to invite, I had to live in it to begin with, because I had to wait for getting permission to do what I wanted to do. And actually that was a really useful thing, because I lived in it in its not very nice state. But it did make me realise where light came in, where light didn't come in, and it gave me time to really figure it out. Anyway, the important thing was that I was coming in off the street, and I wanted a door that just looked like a very simple, almost a garden door in a long wall, because my front door and the next door garden is the same wall. So it's quite confusing to people, which I quite like, as to where one thing begins and one thing ends. So I have this little pale blue door, and you come into a sort of wonderful turquoise lacquered library, and it's got a skylight above it. And I have a wonderful woman that I admire enormously, a ceramicist called Kate Malone, and I bought from her a wonderful pot, and inside it's this turquoise colour, but it fades out because she doesn't know what's going to happen to it in the firing. And so I took that pot and gave it to my specialist painter, and I said, I want you to paint the wall from dark to light turquoise, just fading out into the sky, so that it just is a bit interesting, and I want it lacquer, because this is a little jewel box of a house. And when I was, quite a long time ago, the first ever book I wrote was on Elsie de Wolfe, who was one of the first American interior designers. And she had written a book called The Little House of Many Mirrors. And this house is very influenced by that, because I've got mirrored slips in the bookcases, I've mirrored the chimney breast, I've mirrored the two sides of the entryway into the living room from the hallway, and my cupboard that houses my entire china collection, which is opposite the kitchen, is also mirror-faced. It was made for me by William Yeowood, and I love it. It's got my initial on the top because he made it specially. And so there's a lot of mirror and a lot of reflections. And actually that's really, really rather nice here because it's quite small, but it never feels small, and I have quite a lot of people here quite a lot of the time. The other thing I did was I lacquered the ceiling because I wasn't able to make the house higher than it was. So I had to the ground floor has quite a small ceiling because as it was a studio, it was obviously very high, but they put in a floor, so my bedroom floor is upstairs, and therefore the ceiling is pretty minimal. So I decided to do without a cornice and to lacquer the ceiling, and so the lights reflect in the ceiling and it sort of lifts the whole thing. And I think sometimes you don't realize when you think of doing something how dramatic a difference it's going to make. And this ceiling, actually, I really wonder even at myself, I think without knowing it, it turned into a stroke of genius, which makes me laugh sometimes because people say it's so clever, and you think, well, I didn't think it was all that clever at the time, but it just happens to have made an enormous difference to the room. And then I have a wonderful friend in Paris called Guillaume Sahlberg, and he did these glass sliding doors that disappear into the wall and come out and divide the sitting area from the dining area. Because I really enjoy laying the table, and I've got far too much china and glass, but I don't like people coming for dinner and seeing exactly what's going to happen. I sort of quite like to throw the glass door back into the wall and then see the table. And I think that's quite fun. Having left the hall, we now come into the living room, and it is one big space. When I first bought this house, that part over there was a room, and there was a little passage came down it, and there was this room, and there was two windows up into the garden, and what was important to me was to get as much light into this house as possible, because actually there isn't that much light, and that's very important to me. And so I made very wide windows on both ends and opened the whole thing up. I put the staircase at the far end, which we'll go to in a minute. But while we're in here, this is where I lacquered the ceiling to try and lift the feel. I mirrored the fireplace to widen it, because actually it's quite narrow. On plan, this was quite difficult to map out. The sofa it's comfortable, but it's also not as deep as quite a lot of these English sofas are. But I was so conscious of the fact of trying to get width and make a comfortable sitting area. And that's really why I put this corner piece in. When I first moved in, I had a pair of chests of drawers, and I had a chair and another chair. So it was more 6 or 7 people only. But now on here, you give a party and you get about certainly 4, if not 5 people sitting on here. Then I've got a pair of these chairs, which are actually rather clever, because I bought them again at the antique show, the Battersea Antique Show, which is an amazing place to go. And they're very comfortable because the seat is very wide, but the arm is nothing. And yet, when you sit in it, it's extremely comfortable because the arms are just where they are. And so you're not missing that great roll of fabric like you get on a club chair. And they can fit in more neatly, so I was really pleased with these. They're also quite deep and comfortable, and you can sit well back in if you want to. And you can get out of them with those arms, which everyone needs to be able to do. So now I've got sort of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can get 11 to 12 people sitting in this room without actually moving furniture, which is quite good. The other thing I had to think of was, well, the fireplace. So when I came to the house, the wall was deeper. So I thought I was frightfully clever, and I took the wall out, and I realized the chimney breast was way back here. So I was delighted because it gave me an extra foot of room. And then I was in America on Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, and I found this fireplace. And I thought, that is amazing, because it's low and it's long, and it'll fit the sort of feeling of the room. So I decided to mirror the slips and create a fireplace. Well, then the man from the council came along and said my chimney breast wasn't deep enough because the rules had changed, and would I like to make it deeper? And I said, no, I wouldn't. I don't want a fireplace. I bought some rock crystal logs, which a friend of mine in New York, I saw them with him, Alex Papachristides, who's a wonderful designer in New York, and he generously told me where to get them. So I got the crystal logs. It's an entirely ridiculous fireplace. Mirror, crystal, brass, but it doesn't matter because my house is always warm. And so I don't need to have a log fire burning, but it does give a focal point, which I think is really important. And my children always say to me, who are in the business with me, Mummy, you think you buy so successfully and cheaply when you go abroad and you don't see the shipping bills, which luckily I don't. So I shall continue to shop abroad and not worry about them. So anyway, here is that nice little corner. Here is the fireplace. Here are some special things that I collect. I love being surrounded in this room by people I know. These are Tommy Mitchell, and I love his work, and I've used it a lot. This is Andrew Wicks, who's a ceramicist, and I was given this by somebody, and I love it. This I went out on a limb, and I went to the ceramic show with Kate Malone, because I said I don't know enough about ceramics, and she introduced me to this German lady, and this is just so extraordinary. When you take the lid off, there's a little flower perched inside. I mean, it's like a little ossa. And you can't put it back wrong. You have to put it back exactly in the right place. And I just think, and the pattern matches perfectly, and that gives me enormous pleasure. So I got those 2 pieces from her. I bought this a long time ago from a girl called Sophie Correndon. I had it in one previous house, and I love it. I love the scale of it in this house, because this is really quite a small room, but having this massive picture, well, massive for this house, sort of makes it look as if it's a bigger room. The scale is marvelous, and I love the brass going on, brass on there, brass candlesticks, and going into that on this mirror, so that it sort of just floats. And this is really the colour of bronze. So I just find that makes the whole wall go away, and again adds to the width of the room, which is really important. And then these 2 paintings are done for me by a wonderful friend of mine in India called Sunita Kumar, and she was very much part of Mother Teresa, and you'll see Mother in all the pictures. She's there, and I had said to her when I was in India, in Calcutta, that I'd gone to one of the great palaces, and that there were all these naughty monkeys and animals all everywhere. And I felt that if Mother had been there, she would have told them all to behave. And so she painted this picture with all of the animals looking as if they were doing what they were told. And this is the Queen Victoria Gallery. And there is Mother as an angel flying in. So all of that is, I just love being surrounded by this, because it's done by people I know. And of course, this is my wonderful Kate Malone Waddesdon collection. This is quite unusual for her, and it was on the catalogue, and I somehow managed to buy it before anyone else did. And I like these pinks and turquoises, and I love them here. And these are also from the Waddesdon collection. And she is so inventive that this is on the carved stone at the front of the house. And she made 2 vases out of it. Not that I'd ever dare put any flowers in it because I think it would ruin the whole thing. This was a present, and again, I love these, the Orsa again. So all these little things mean a lot to me. My silver's buried in here. Let's hope no burglars are watching the film. I love this because I remember buying this at another antique show, and I just found that it was irresistible. You couldn't not touch it. And I think once you have to touch something, you almost have to buy it. And then over here, there's a wonderful gallery in England, and he's everywhere actually. He's called Adrian Sassoon, and he represents Kate Malone, but he also represents Michael Eden. And I love these. They're called, this one was my first one, and this is called wedge wooded because it's a wedgwood shape, but it's made of nylon, and it's all made, I'm going to get that wrong, but I think it's 3D or whatever. Anyway, it's made on a computer, which I think is genius, especially as I can barely turn on a computer. And I got completely stuck in and I love this one. I love the colour, and I love the shape. And this one, I remember going to Adrian's and saying, my goodness, Adrian, how come it was on a shelf, how come you can sell ivory? And he said, it's not ivory. And he picked it up, and here it is. It's light as a feather, and it looks like the most wonderful little ivory piece, carved so beautifully. And the proportion and the whole thing, and the sort of little jokes all around it, a little heart shape there. It's just, I think it's extraordinary. I think his work is just wonderful. So this is so far my collection of his, no doubt will expand. And this was all of my family going off to a wedding. And here, my children, my previous Shih Tzu, this is by somebody called Holly Freen, who I've worked with, and I've used her to do some work for me. And they got me this tiny, I admired the picture, and they went and bought it. And they came back rather embarrassed because they said they hadn't realized in the advertising for it, it looked like a big picture, and then it was this size. But actually, it's much more difficult to paint this size, so it was very, very special. And it sits there and reminds me of Twix. And then we have this garden, which I sort of resurrected, and you'll see this pierced frieze really along here, and that gives the air to the basement, because what I had to do here would never have fitted into this house unless I dug out the basement. And so we'll go down there, but that's what it is. And so I had it sprayed the same colour as the stone, so that when you open the door, you sort of feel that you're not conscious of the fact that you're walking over air. And then this is a lovely place when it's not raining to sit and read a newspaper, have a cup of coffee, and I have an awning and I have heaters. And this also at a dinner party it sort of extends the room for quite a long time. I mean, you can sit out there with the awning and with the heaters probably into October. And then I have a wonderful collection of more pictures. People, again, I know, things I love, like beach scenes. And sort of, I just sit in here and feel I'm surrounded by friends. I think that one of the most important things when you do your own home is to figure out the seating plan and therefore the lighting plan, because that's really what you have to do first. And so I think always put in more plugs than you need would be my advice. And the other thing I think is important is to make sure that the lights that go on at the wall when you first come in put enough light on and enough differences. So you've got your spots in the ceiling and your table lamps and maybe your picture lights and wall lights on different circuits, so that immediately gives you a lot of opportunity to change the lighting at different times of the day and for different things you're doing. But that insinuates that you're doing a refurbishment. But if you're just decorating a room that you're in a rental, I think it's quite a good idea to stay away from the sort of automatic floor plan of a sofa and 2 chairs and 2 other chairs. So, I mean, in this room, I managed to put a corner seating unit in order to get more people into a small space. And actually, for such a small room, we have a lot of seating here. And I think one also has to think about high and low chairs, because quite a lot of people like to sit on something a little bit a higher seat and more support in the back. and other people like to sit deeply into a sofa, and I think you need to have a balance between the two. So I think that's something well worth thinking about. And the other thing that I think makes a room much more human is when you've been somewhere and you bought something because you really love it. And if you really love it, it'll always fit in. And I think that makes a room yours rather than a designer's or a magazine cutout thing. And I believe in collecting objects as well, especially from people I know. So now, having created this space and got rid of the bedroom that was here and the horrible passage and the staircase, I now have this huge open space, and it looks through to the garden. And what I love when I'm here alone is sitting over there and literally looking at garden. And for London to sort of just sit and be surrounded by greenery in your own little place is absolutely special, I think, and really makes it feel like you've left all the cares of the world outside the door. So this is this one part of this screen that, should I want to, I didn't want to break the space up with doors. And so I got hold of my friend Guillaume Salberg, and he created this for me. We had to have one side, but actually that lives against the wall for normally, and it sort of almost looks like a sculpture. And I call this a sort of Sonia Delaunay inspired pattern, really. And so here it is when I give a dinner. It's also quite useful having a door as part of it. And the other bit hides nicely in this bit of wall. So if I invite you to dinner, this will open magically, and you won't have seen what's on the table until this is slid back. So I just think the way the light dances through it in the daytime and the candles dance through it at night, it just makes it very special. And sometimes, if it's really cold, I leave this one open so that whoever's sitting on this sofa feels there's a wall behind them, which I also think is, at some times of the year, that's quite a nice feel. So now we come into the sort of dining area, I think I'd call it, rather than a dining room. And these wall lights, which I have here, have followed me probably for 6 houses. And I always want to have them with me. I bought them from a wonderful shop, Guinevere. And they remind me of Geneviève, who started this shop a long time ago. And I'm still friendly with the sons who have the shop. In fact, we're delighted to know that Guinevere is reopening in Chelsea Harbour quite soon, because we've all been bereft of where to go and buy antiques. Anyway, this reminds me of Geneviève every time I look at them. And she was quite difficult, and quite a lot of people she didn't like, and I was so lucky that she liked me and I was able to buy whatever I wanted from there. And here we have the William Yeowood cupboard, which houses the china and glass, which I'm passionate about. It's one of my many weaknesses. And he made it for me in my previous house, which had a much higher ceiling, because I had a rather complicated radiator, which I wanted to hide. So at the bottom part was the radiator grill. But when I came here and I was more in control of the building, I didn't need a radiator anymore, plus it was too high. But I'd also, by that time, bought more china. So he created the bottom part with all the cupboards in, and the top part, and he put an N on the top for my name. And as you can see, it came in with ½ an inch to spare, so that was a bit of a slightly worrying moment. Anyway, we'll go to the cupboard and see what's in it. And so this side of the cupboard is sort of greens. There's dark green, light greens. I mean, these I brought back from America. They're green opaline, and I've never found any more, but I use those. These are wonderful glasses my daughter gave me. They're from Italy. And I have green ones and white ones, so I alternate them on the table. Then I had a wonderful friend in America called Geraldine Stutz, and she was so stylish. She started Bendel's, and she had a collection of amber glass. And I remember when I first saw it, I went to stay with her at her house in the country, and I had always rather sort of abhorred amber glass and thought it was absolutely hideous. And suddenly my sort of hero had amber glass, and I thought, well, I've got to like this. And so she said, do you want to lay the table for the dinner party tonight? And I said, yes, I'd love to. And I did it all in amber glass and with the candle light, and sort of picking up the colours. It was just like a golden evening. It was fantastic. So I became completely obsessed by amber. And now I've got quite a lot too. And she very kindly, when she died, her stepdaughter, who's a great friend of mine, said, what would you like? And I said, I would love some of the amber glass, and here it is. So that's the little story of that one. And more ordinary amber glass up there. And then another cupboard with dark red and purple glass. These are William Yearwood's wonderful amethyst glasses. Such a wonderful shape. And I've got two sizes. So I use them for water and sometimes for white wine, or sometimes just for a drink. I don't think you can put red wine in a coloured glass because it doesn't look quite right. And while we're here, I've started a collection of, because of the amber glass, there's a wonderful place in Greece, and I started collecting brown. And then my daughter gave me these, which I think are wonderful. They're marbleized. But what amuses me about this collection is that I call my house the Hut. So I had these plates done with the Hut written on it, so everyone knows where they are. And then I would mix it, maybe for dessert, with creamware. And I think that and the creamware is beautiful together. So you could do cheese and then some delicious ice cream or raspberry or something like that. And then in midwinter, from the same company, I bought these plates with the mushrooms. So you can see why I need this cupboard rather badly. And I like the thing, I'm not naturally tidy, but I do love the china cupboard to be tidy so that everything is exactly, has its own place. It looks like it's a regiment. And these I bought, these are amazing. These I bought, again, in an antique shop. And I bought them in various different moments. They're Chelsea. I mean, they're Wedgwood, they're not Chelsea. And each one has a different flower. And I love this edge. I've got about 10 of them. And I only wash them up myself because I would be upset if they got broken. And I only want to be upset with myself. So laying the table for me is rather special because I can't cook. So I think that if I bamboozle everybody by producing a beautiful table, they won't worry about the food so much. For the table, I have my sort of basics are these ice buckets. They're about 19th century ice buckets, which are just down the table. And then I have candlesticks in between. Normally, either tall, I've got a pair of rather wonderful tall silver candlesticks so that the candles are all up here somewhere. I have one spotlight which goes on this centre flower. And because the table's narrow, there's not really much room for anything else. At Christmas, I have a whole lot of white stags and deer and animals, and that the whole table becomes white and silver and mirror, because I've got a mirrored piece that goes all the way along and everything's on it, including I've got a mass of these which I've collected over the years, little votive holders, and they're all different. And so they just scatter along the table, so it gives a really good low light of candles. And then there are some tall candles in between. So you've got the different heights. And here I think we've got silver. And what I have, which I love, and I also collect, everybody gets their own salt and pepper. And I've got all sorts of animals. I've even got a motor car, which has got my own private number plate. It says N1NA, which I had engraved on it. These are all sort of 1930s, 1940s, and all sorts of animals. So that's rather fun. So I always think if anybody was short of something to say, they could talk about the salts and peppers. This is my monkey, which was the first one I was given, with the two barrels, the pineapple. I feel he must have come from maybe Jamaica or somewhere. And there's I suppose this would have been rum. But anyway, that's for pepper, that's mustard, and that's salt in the bottom on a little bucket. I think they're just fabulous. So that, you can see how necessary those cupboards are. And then what is lovely about this is that you can go on through into this garden. And here I mirrored the end because it's quite small, but it's quite special. There's a table that I can eat at or have drinks in the summer. Life in London is quite complicated. The minute you plan to do dinner or anything in the garden, it rains. So like this, I usually just do drinks and canapes and then come back in here. But it is a lovely place to be. And it's a lovely place to just open the door and even if you don't go out, just feel that you've got that extra added space. And again, here are the same grills across to get out into the garden and to give air to the rooms below. So on this side, either side of the double door, this is also all open. I've got double sliding doors to the kitchen here. And then either side, I bought a pair of tables as consoles. And then I realized that I didn't have enough storage space. So I asked a cabinet maker to turn them into silver drawers. And he did these wonderful drawers, which literally take all the silver divided very tidily out. And it disappears and you don't really see the drawer. And it also brought the tables up a little bit higher. And this is where I house the sort of Kate Malone obsession. This is my latest piece, which I couldn't believe. I saw it at Masterpiece. And my nickname is Lady Tassel by a few of my friends. And I said to Kate, I can't believe you've done a tassel. I've got to buy it because nobody else can have it. And she said, I don't know why I did it either. I just had a moment of thinking I wanted to make a tassel. So clearly, it was meant for me. And so here it is, and I'm thrilled with it. And I love that sort of blue colour. And there's I think this was my first piece. This is the fennel. And then, of course, she's well known for her pumpkins. And then I've got these two pictures either side, which I think are rather wonderful. They're lithographs. And then I've got more Kate Malone and another lithograph. So they're Léger, the two pictures, and more silver going on in here. So it's really convenient to lay the table because I think it's very important in a house that everything's practical. And before I did these, this silver was stored away somewhere, so I actually just simply never used it. And then I just thought to myself, what on earth's the point? So like this, it's just so easy to lay the table, and nobody's got any time. I run back from the office and, people are coming in an hour's time, and so it's all done in a minute. And I think that's really important. I think you just have to make your life work. Hence these to make the flowers easy. The kitchen's here. Thank goodness for all my friends. I have a lovely Kate who comes and cooks, and she manages to create all sorts of wonderful things out of this room. And I love this picture, which was done again by a friend of mine, and called Henry Kohler, and it's a fantastic woman in Capri who everybody knew. And I just feel, unfortunately, I can't cook like her, but maybe she exudes something, and we'll all taste delicious Italian food. The other lovely thing about this table is that I can work on it. It's very narrow and it's sort of easy to write letters on, and I don't have a desk down here, so somehow I'd rather be here, and I don't eat here every day because I'm not here every day. So somehow you can lay things out on it. I've even invited people from my business here, and we've shown our fabrics to the office and to all the reps on here. So it becomes really useful. I mean, it's just, I don't like dining rooms that are just dining rooms and you never go into them. That's why I'd rather love this. You have to keep walking through this space. And as I said earlier, somebody didn't actually even find the staircase because it's tucked away here. And I remember when the architects drew this staircase, they took up much too much space. And I said, the day I'm too fat to get up those stairs, I really probably won't be able to get up them anyway. So I brought the staircase much narrower, and it's perfectly fine. And then, because I've got dogs that I don't want to necessarily, they do come upstairs, but I just like to know that they're down here. I shut this little gate, which was made especially for the dogs. So we touched on the lacquered ceiling here, and I think this is a very good shot of it, because you can see the pictures reflected. You can see that picture going up, and you can see these lights reflected. So somehow it lifts the whole room, I think. And I hadn't realized what a terrific success it was going to be when I just thought about it. And I love the way this door and the carving is also reflected on that ceiling. So the ceiling becomes interesting and lifts the whole thing. You don't feel, I think the danger in my mind was that you'd be in this room and you'd feel there was this little low ceiling on top of you, and you'd be brought down by it, and you're just lifted up. You never think that you're in a low room actually in here. My sort of design career has been really quite steadfast, I think, considering. But I was lucky enough, aged about 17, or I suppose 18, to go and work for John Fowler of Colfax and Fowler. And he was the most extraordinary teacher, really, or imparter of knowledge. And I was just unbelievably lucky that he sort of took to me and nurtured me, really. And I learned a huge amount from him, because he really was just the most wonderful person, and the founder of Colfax and Fowler. And so that was a wonderful beginning. And then after about 3 years, and really comparatively young, I decided to set off on my own. I was beginning to be asked to do things. And I was asked if I'd do Annabelle's, the refurbishment of Annabelle's, because it was always already up and running. And there were one or two other rather big houses that I was being asked if I would go and do. So I thought, well, this is my opportunity. I wasn't married, so I didn't have any dependents. And so I set off and started my own interior design business. And I was lucky enough to get a room in an architect's office that I knew. And so suddenly, although I was literally me and my assistant, I was in a building with architects, garden designers, engineers, and all those people around. So it gave me some gravitas, and it also gave me a huge backup. And I suppose I was just incredibly lucky that I had some very good opportunities. And then I suddenly had a desire to have a shop. And I went to Mark Burley, who owned Annabelle's, and I said, I really would love to have a shop. And he said, well, I'd quite like to have a shop too. So we opened the most minute shop on the Pimlico Road called Nina Campbell and Mark Burley. And we sold what some newspaper called unashamed luxury, to which my response was, I see no reason to be ashamed about luxury. I think it doesn't have to be a Rolls Royce. It could be a boiled egg, perfectly cooked. I mean, I think luxury is making you feel comfortable and looked after. Doesn't have to be rich and flashy. So anyway, this is how we started our funny shop. And that went on for quite a long time. And meanwhile, I was designing Annabelle's and Mark's Club. And then one day somebody came to my office and said, would you ever consider doing our house? And I said, where is it? And they gave me the address, and it was a house I'd lived in as a child. So I was so intrigued that I said, yes, but I lived there when I was 11 years old. And so then suddenly all the decorating started again. And because I'd sort of thought I was fed up with decorating, I wanted to just be a shop owner, and now I'm both. I do the interior design, I have a shop, I have a textile career we sell our textiles through Osborne and Little. We do tiles with Fired Earth. We do a wonderful line of less expensive furniture with Next, which is a catalogue business. And, it just sort of seems to ramble on, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. What I love is, again, all these pictures. I mean, this picture and this picture were given to me by the owner of a house I did in China, on mainland China. And I mean, I just think it's rather fascinating, because this is all the people that have owned it, apparently. So the chops are the owners of the paintings. and I suppose a story about it. And I just think that these are it's just lovely to have, because I also think of this guy and the work that I did in China, and obviously working in China was quite challenging, but it brings back all the memories. And so I think that's rather lovely to have. And thank goodness I had a tall enough wall. Now these 4 pictures here were drawn by Albert Hadley, who I was lucky enough to know, and who was wonderfully generous with his time and knowledge and everything. And they're all pictures of rooms done by Elsie de Wolfe. So they made specific difference to me. I mean, here's a trellised room that she did. There's her bathroom with masses of sitting space, because she thought the bathroom was the perfect place to entertain. But the fact that it's a combination for me of Albert Hadley, who I loved, and Elsie de Wolfe, who I wrote about, and I found them in Gerald Bland's gallery in New York. And Albert very sweetly dedicated them to me. So those are really special. So as you can imagine, coming up the staircase is like old friends. Okay, so now we're in my bedroom, and this is just over full, but I do love it. And this is where the magnolia tree is that made me buy the house. But when I bought the house, the bed was where the bathroom is, and so you would have never seen. So I love the idea of waking up. The blinds are electric, so I can lie in my bed, up go the blinds, and the tree is in front of me. And actually, of course, magnolias only come out for about 2 weeks of the year, but for those 2 years, it's absolutely breathtaking. And actually, even now, it's lovely just having a complete tree in front of you, so you don't see anything. And then behind me are, again, pictures of people that really matter to me. This painting here is Cecil Beaton's watercolour of my godmother. This is Labouchere. That's my stepfather as a child. These are all rather that's Henry Kohler, who was a friend of mine. It was one of his Christmas cards. And so this room is full of, again, photographs. It's not very tidy, and you can see what books do. They get away from you, and soon I won't be able to see out of the window, but I've got to deal with that. Then there's my desk, and now you'll understand why I have to write any letters down in the dining room table, because this has all got a bit full. And it's just finding the time to tidy it all up. But the thing that I did in here was the most important, I think, was I wanted to keep going with the whole idea of the mirrors and making it feel bigger. So I did these, I found 4 of these. So they go all the way across here. And so I can shut this door, and again, the mirrors make you feel that it's bigger. But what I did was I bought for the basin, in case I don't shut them, I bought a mirrored buffet and took the top off and created my basin vanity out of it, and lacquered the bathroom in pink, so that it is, if it's open, it isn't, I don't feel like I'm in the bathroom. It's got that lovely mirror and the wall lights and this unit, which is really handy because it's got lots of storage space in it. And then the bath was the only thing I kept from the house, because it was quite heavy to move out, and it's it's perfect size for me. And then there's a skylight above it with another tree, so I can lie in the bath and have that wonderful tree above me. And then I've got a portrait of my eldest daughter here, overlooking me. And then the other thing was that I don't personally like, and I thought this room was too small, to have clothes cupboards in it. So I brought this wall forward because it's an attic. And so this door goes through, and there is a huge walk-in closet goes behind, slightly limited on the height on one side because of the attic roof, but as I'm luckily only about 5'4", my trousers and my skirts and everything else and shirts all hang on that side. So, and it's also, if I'm a bit untidy, they're all out of the way, and I don't have to worry about clothes. I don't really like clothes in a bedroom. So that is, this is really my bedroom, and it is a joy to be in and to look out all the way down the houses, the gardens of the houses of the next door street. So I feel that I'm just surrounded by greenery, and it's really, for the middle of London and middle of Chelsea, I think I'm very, very lucky. I consider myself incredibly lucky to have sort of fallen on this little tiny area because, first of all, what I love about it is that when I was first here, I decided that I was obviously the oldest person in the street, even 17 years ago, and that I would invite all the neighbours for Christmas drinks, which I did. And as a result of that, we have all know each other in this street. We have a WhatsApp group. We all look after each other. We have street parties that we give for ourselves, and we lay a table all the way down the middle of the street in the summer. We did one for the coronation. We did one for the Jubilee. And we are quite silly, and we have a frightfully good time. And so I think it's an amazing, I'm just lucky to have this amazing place to live. And to the point that the other night, my doorbell rang rather late, and I was slightly worried about it. And so I just went on our WhatsApp group and I said, is anybody up? And can anybody see my front door? And, is there somebody weird at the front door, or is there somebody, that needs help? And I sort of immediately got a response, and I was and I felt very looked after. So I think and we all do that for each other. Somebody needs a parcel taking in. It's rather like a village. And I think it's a wonderful place to end up, really. I think that making your house a home is really important. And I think it's also slightly difficult if you're an interior designer, because people say, they either say to you, we didn't dare ask you to our home because it's not tidy enough. Or they say, we're coming to your house. And so, they're going to be terrified of sitting down in case they drop something. And so I think you need to make your home you need to take a lot of time making sure it's really comfortable. And then you just have to let it go. And I remember reading, when I was quite young, a book about somebody called Beau Brummel, who was a Regency dandy. And he said that it might take him 4 hours to arrange the cravat at his neck with all the things that men in the 18th century did. But the minute that he left the house, he never touched it again. And so I feel like that about the house. I mean, you make sure it's comfortable. You make sure the drink tray is right there where everybody can get a drink the minute they arrive. And from that moment on, everyone has to relax and feel that they're going to have a wonderful evening.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.